Hey guys, Corey, Faymus Media, and we're here today at Union Square, and I got the URSA Mini. So the URSA Mini is the newest camera from Blackmagic Design. It was supposed to come out summer of 15, ended up coming out at the end of the summer of 2016 into the winter, early 2017. So it's late, but it's finally here. I did the unboxing and the setup video. You've already seen that. This camera is absolutely fantastic. It's got a lot of great things about it, although it was late, but we can get over that as long as the camera performs. 4.6K up to 60 frames a second. It's going to do ProRes 422. It'll also do 444 XQ. It does HQ. It'll also do the proxy or the LT. It does chew through CFast cards like crazy, so I hope you have a really deep pocket. 256 gigabyte CFast card with no compression in raw cinema DNG might get you like maybe 16 to 18 minutes, which is absolutely insane. It'll just chew through V-mount batteries. This V-mount will power my RED for an hour. It might power this for an hour, maybe. So it's about the equivalent of, say, shooting on a RED as far as how fast it eats through the battery. The auto white balancing on the screen is just amazing. There's no green or pink tint cast on any of the footage like it did on day one. The firmware is updated now, so that's all fixed. You can also black shade, which is a very big plus. It's in all the big cameras, including the RED. You're able to black shade all your footage, make sure the camera's fully warmed up, 5 to 10 minutes, black shade with the lens cap on. It'll really help with the noise. The only thing I don't like is it looks like there's fixed pattern noise of some sort. Very small amount compared to some of the issues I'd seen in the production camera, although I didn't have it on my personal unit. But there is some traces of it at 1600 ASA. I recommend staying at 800. The native ISO on this camera is 400. I shoot at 800. Most of the time it'll help you raise your, your white balance a little bit. It's gonna make the middle gray and middle whites a little bit brighter, helping you to expose into the shadows better with less noise. It's better than just pushing it in post. So the URSA Mini, like I said in the unboxing video, has got the audio inputs on the back. I've got the V-mount already set up. Viewfinder is already installed. I'm running 18 to 35 Sigma 1.8, which is really the best lens for this camera for running and gunning, as it's internal zoom. If you're using a matte box, it's perfect. f1.8 for low light will really help. Plus it's a tack sharp lens and it's wide angle for this sensor. So I have everything set up. We're gonna get to shooting. Right now I'm shooting in Cinema DNG RAW, and I have no compression at all. And you can also turn the LUT on the screen. I'll give you guys a shot of that in just a little bit, but you can adjust up to 60p. You can set what you want your presets to be on the back of the monitor, where you can see here, I can do false color, focus peaking. Everything is touch control. The monitor is just amazing. What I like is that you can format the cards in Mac OS X Journal, which is so much better than EXFAT. EXFAT is really crummy compared to anything OS X. It's just not a very reliable format. EXFAT has nothing but problems. You got to be really, really careful about ejecting media and taking care of your memory cards. So I like the fact that you can do that. So I'm turning on focus assist, which is focus peaking. As you can see, I got these gloves on because it's freezing here. The handle is really not as comfortable as the Canon. The C300's got a slightly better handle in my opinion, and everything that you use function-wise with this camera has pretty much got to use your thumb, which is, annoying considering the buttons are on the top of the handle, so you're constantly having to reach to the top of the handle. The viewfinder is fully adjustable, which is just amazing. And might I add that the viewfinder that Blackmagic has designed here is probably one of the most comfortable, highest quality viewfinders I've ever seen. And you can adjust it. Now, the screw is going to go in here, which I don't have. I'm actually kind of retarded. I forgot to put it in, but it's so tight, there's no way it's actually going to come out unless you literally yank it. Like, I'm pulling pretty hard right now to slide it, and as you can see, I can slide the viewfinder wherever I want. So this way it's comfortable on my shoulder. So I'm going to set it up and pull it exactly where I want it. I just wish they would allow the shoulder mount to go further back, but that's as far back as it goes. So I would say that right about there is comfortable. So it's pretty customizable. This arm is not long enough, if you want to know the truth. It's about the only downfall of the camera is it should be, the shoulder mount should allow the camera and the arm to sit right about here, but other than that, I'm not going to complain too much. It's not the most comfortable camera in the world to hold. It's definitely not the most uncomfortable, but you know. And the fact that it's shoulder mount, the fact that it has a shoulder mount makes it very, very comfortable, so I can get shots that you normally couldn't get on a monopod or handheld. And there's not a lot of handshake because of the fact that it's shoulder mount. I'm going to do some 60p. I always love doing 60p, and this can do amazing 60p and full 4.6K, so it's wonderful. Make sure you're running a 90-degree shutter angle when you're doing 60p. You can also hold it in your shoulders here. It's a well-balanced camera. It tells you in the viewfinder exactly how many minutes or seconds or even hours that you would have left. I don't think you're ever going to see hours of the remaining time on this camera. So we just did some 60p. Let's look at some raw 4:1. The screen is absolutely amazing. Blackmagic has definitely done it again. This camera's beautiful. In time, I just hope they're able to deliver products a little quicker, and I'm hoping that they're going to be able to design even better sensors. This is a big step forward from the production camera and the cinema camera. What it really comes down to is your budget. Just know that to shoot the way I'm shooting right now, not including the lens, you're probably looking at around $7,500, almost. The camera's $5,000, the viewfinder's $1,500 at $6,500. The battery is $200 at $67, and then you got the plate for the battery, so you're right at $7,000. Shoulder mount kit is $395, so you're about $7,400, $7,500, and that's without tax or shipping. So that's what you're at to shoot like this, plus any lenses. So it's really, truly only about $3,000 and change in difference, like I said in the other video from the C300 Mark II, and it's only about maybe $2,000 to $3,000 off from a RED Scarlet. If you're getting the Scarlet Dragon, it may be $3,000 or $4,000 less than that, but it's starting to get up there in price, and for this amount of money, the camera's got to perform, which it does, but I'm just hoping in the future they give us a little bit more headroom on the ASA, and they also give us some more frames per second, and that would be great. But 60p and 4.6K is good enough for pretty much anything, unless you're trying to do really, really slow motion or high frame rates for sports. Right now I'm shooting in 4:1 compression in 4.6K just to see how everything looks. I find this camera very well balanced even in my hands like this. It's not as tiring because I can brace it against my shoulder. So I can put it on my shoulder and I can use the viewfinder, or I can you know, rest it against my shoulder like this because it's not that heavy. I guess I'm just used to operating my RED. My RED Epic Dragon was a little bit heavier than this. Let's take a shot in ProRes XQ. Ready to edit right in Final Cut Pro. So right here on the handle, you can actually touch auto focusing, which will actually set the focus. It'll rack it for you automatically, very similar to the RED cameras and other film cameras, as well as the auto aperture and auto exposure right there on the handle. So that's really, really cool. I don't know if I could say for sure if the dynamic range is 15 stops, but it is definitely more than 13 on the cinema camera and a whole lot more than the production camera at 12. I would say this camera is definitely into the 14 range. And if you guys are wondering what I have in my hands, I recommend them. They're free hands. Index and thumb have the special material to use touchscreens and iPhones, keeping your hands nice and warm. I'll put a link down in the information box. So if you guys want to keep your hands warm while shooting in the really cold weather, these are amazing. They're not as warm as wearing snowboarding gloves or skiing gloves, but they're significantly better than nothing, and they allow you to use touchscreens. We're going to go back into RAW shooting. It also does have DNX, DNX HR, DNX HD, which is great. You can also do 4.6, get 2.4 to 140, 608 by 1920. You can do the 4K, 16 by 9, 4K DCI Ultra HD, 2K, 16 by 9 HD, regular 2K, and 3K anamorphic for de-squeezing, for using anamorphic lenses. So it's just great. It also has your LUTs right here, Blackmagic film to video, which you can easily turn the LUT on in the setup, or excuse me, the preset menu. It's very, very easy. The menus are much, much better than all of their other cameras combined, except the URSA. False color, you can set what you want your F2 or F1 to be, which is what I got for my LUT. This is your audio setup. Monitor for meters. Zebra, I got Focus Assistant on right now. And this is, of course, your setup for recording. You can do time lapses and capture how many frames you want for every 23 frames while you're recording, or for your 30p, 60p. You can switch to which card you want to record, do film or video. And this is where you can set up between all the different ProReses or RAW, which I'm going to shoot lossless again. It's really a remarkable camera for the price. It packs a lot more features than, say, the Sony FS7, although the Sony FS7 is going to be better in low light and a little bit more run and gun friendly. But if you're shooting a film, I would rather shoot on this. Blackmagic does make some really, really good cameras. And this is the camera that we should have had originally because it's much easier to shoot on than the cinema camera or production camera. While not perfect, it's a huge leap forward. Just wish we had it a little earlier. It is a year late. And as you can see, the sun is setting, and it's no problem for this camera at all in the low light. I'm shooting at 800 ASA, which is plenty. It's really pretty much sunset right now. It's getting pretty dim out here. The camera will perform, from what I've seen, a lot better than the cinema camera. And the cinema camera is better than the production camera. So you're gonna get a lot more latitude than you would with the production or the cinema camera. This is truly a gem to shoot on. Even with the V mount, it's really not that heavy. It's still considerably light for the size of the camera, the cooling, the fans that it's got in it, and all the stuff I'm rigged out with. It's really not too heavy. I would say it's about 8 pounds, 9 pounds, which is about half of what the URSA weighs. It's a nice shot for dynamic range. Once again, I wish the viewfinder showed my histogram, but it doesn't. And that's what I love about this camera, is the white balancing. Because we're shooting in Cinema DNG RAW, it allowed me to pull back the white balance, tint, and color temperature very easily. And to be honest, that's the one area that this camera excels in over the C300 from Canon. The C300 Mark II, which I'm being filmed on right now, is white balancing. C300's got great auto white balancing, and you can adjust it in post, but tint correction is nowhere near as easy as it is on something like the Blackmagic URSA Mini, or even the production camera, cinema camera, or like something like an RE or a RED. C300 Mark II is a fantastic camera. I just wish there was better white balancing like there is in this camera. The white balancing on the URSA Mini is by far superior to most cameras on the market. It really is not fatiguing to hold. As you can see, we've been shooting in this video now. We're at about 45 minutes I've been holding this camera in my hands. It's really honestly not tiring. 80% of the weight is on my shoulder. All I'm doing is kind of balancing the lens. I mean, if I was sitting here shooting for 2 or 3 hours, it would get a little fatiguing, but considering the size and weight, it balances very nicely. So if you want to white balance, as you can see, I'm holding the camera from the top handle. It's great to have the handle up here. It makes things real easy. But when you want to white balance, you want to make sure to touch the screen where it shows white balance. So if you look down here at the screen, I'll show you. You're going to touch white balance up there, and then you're going to hit auto white balance. Oops. White balance there, auto white balance, and you're going to update the white balance. 7650 is a little warm, so we'll turn that down. Turning it down to 7250, you'll probably go down to about 7,000. It's a little green for my taste. And this is not a green cast, let's not confuse that. This is just the white balance, put in too much green tint. I took most of it out. You have your daylight, tungsten, LED, cloudy, and indoor. And there we go, all done. Your histogram's right there. You can double tap to zoom. There's your battery right there, your white balance, your tint, your ASA, how much time that you've recorded on the current card. You also got your aperture, shutter, frames per second, both cards on the bottom, and of course your audio. We haven't used professional audio inputs, but there's me turning the volume down. So as you can see, it's really dark out here. This is what the human eye actually sees. I'm going to turn the screen down. This is what it looks like to us on the screen, as you can see there. But by turning this back down f2.4 where I had it, it's actually doing pretty darn good. I mean, we're shooting with a film camera outdoor with no sunlight. Sun's almost completely set, and it's almost completely dark out here, and it's just amazing. We didn't even have to go to Times Square like we did with the original URSA video. Remember, Ray remembers that. It was a great video, a great night. We had to go to Times Square because it was too dark. But this camera right here, definitely a lot better than the original sensor.
So now it's time to go ahead and do a dynamic range test, and as you can see, from ungraded flat, there's tons of shadow and highlight detail preserved here. It looks fantastic. When we go ahead and grade it, lots of shadow detail. The sky looks fantastic, beautifully sharp. Colors are awesome. This sensor is very good. Comparing it next to the Blackmagic Cinema camera, we can see it's definitely a lot better of a log file, and there's more dynamic range there. When we go ahead and grade them, more shadow detail and more highlight detail, and the sky looks better. I would say right now it's hard to tell exactly how much dynamic range there is, but there's at least 14 or so stops. Now I'm going to go ahead and compare it to the 1DC. Pay no attention to the focus because I missed it on the 1DC, but the URSA Mini definitely has more dynamic range and a better log file. We go ahead and grade them, and I don't know if it looks like 3 full stops more than the 1DC, but it definitely has more dynamic range. So now let's go ahead and compare it to the Canon C300 Mark II and C-Log 2. Like the colors better in the URSA Mini, but in C-Log 2, the C300 Mark II has more dynamic range. Comparing them graded side by side, there's more shadow detail in the C300 Mark II and a little bit more detail in the sky, but overall pretty darn close considering the price difference of those two cameras. Looking at them all flat across the board here, the URSA Mini and C300 Mark II are leading the way. And when we go ahead and grade them, you can clearly see that the URSA Mini and the C300 Mark II are very close. Canon 1DC is next, and the Blackmagic Cinema camera. Let's go ahead and do a low light test. Here we go. We got the URSA Mini at 400 ASA ISO, and we're going to go ahead and push it to 800, and you're not going to really have any noise issues with this camera below 1600. Even while shooting 1600 in the camera, unless it's really, really dark and you have no lights, you may have issues there. But as you can see, here we are at 1600, no issues whatsoever. We're going to go ahead and push it to 3200. And there you can see it. There's very little noise at all, even at 3200. You're starting to see some dancing noise around, but it looks like film grain, so it's totally cool. ISO 6400, the noise is becoming more prominent, but believe it or not, it's still very usable. If you look at this image, it doesn't look that bad at all. 12,800. I'm surprised by the amount of clarity in this image, considering how high ISO we are. There's just quite a bit of noise in the shadows. URSA Mini, right beside the Blackmagic Cinema camera. We're going to start off at 400. We're not going to see a whole lot of difference in the 400 range or the 800. You're not going to start to see it until about 1600 or 3200. That's where you're going to see that the URSA Mini actually looks much, much better. Side by side right here, ISO 1600, you're going to see that the cinema camera is a little bit brighter, but it's also showing more signs of noise. By the time we get to 3200 ISO, it's clear that the URSA Mini performs better in low light. You can see it in the shadows, you can see it in the highlights. By the time we get to 6400, the cinema camera is showing a ton more noise, and the URSA Mini is looking a little bit more like film grain. 12,800, you can clearly see the colors are just falling apart in the cinema camera. URSA Mini has noise too, but the colors are more accurate. So let's go ahead and compare the URSA Mini to the rest of the cameras. And although you're not going to see much of a difference as far as noise performance is concerned until about 3200 ISO, you will see that the Canon 1DC is the most light sensitive and the URSA Mini is the least, meaning that the Canon 1DC is going to give you a better overall exposure at lower ISO. And you can see that trend right here at ISO 1600 is the 1DC has the most flat exposure level. Now, continuing on 3200 ISO, you're going to see the cinema camera is the noisiest and the 1DC is the cleanest. That's going to continue pretty much throughout the whole video. However, you'll see the battle between the URSA Mini and the C300 Mark II, and it is not much difference between these two cameras. Although the C300 Mark II is a little bit better, it's not bad for a film camera, and the URSA Mini is doing great. So now let's go ahead and do the rolling shutter test, and the URSA Mini does suffer from rolling shutter. Although it's not as bad as the Canon 1DC or the cinema camera, it definitely shows signs. As we can see here next to the C300 Mark II, it's significantly more rolling shutter than the C300. And as you can see from the still frame, the C300 Mark II is much better. Let's go ahead and compare all the cameras side by side. Clearly the 1DC is the worst, followed by the cinema camera, then the URSA Mini, and the one with the least rolling shutter is the C300 Mark II. The Blackmagic Design URSA Mini 4.6K camera is a huge leap from the cinema, pocket cinema, and production camera. The ability to have a shoulder mount kit, run and gun, top handle, viewfinder, V-mount on the back, flip out full 1080p HD screen, 4.6K resolution, you can do widescreen, anamorphic, or full frame, is fantastic. Dual CFast card slots. This is an amazing camera. About the only downfall of this camera is $7,500 is what it's going to cost to get it set up just like I have it. Also, it's a little over a year late, but better late than never. The Blackmagic Design URSA Mini 4.6K camera is very easy to use. The quality is amazing. Fixed pattern noise is almost non-existent in comparison to the production camera. You can shoot much lower light situations. ASA 1600 is absolutely fantastic, even in low light situations, and you can now black shade in the menu. The menus are more intuitive. The URSA Mini 4.6K is the most sophisticated camera in their lineup, of course, with the exception of the King Daddy Big URSA, which weighs a ton. But with all kidding aside, the URSA Mini 4.6K is a huge leap forward and an amazing camera in almost every way. With all the options that are out there right now and different cameras, if you're asking yourself which camera truly is for you, well, overall, the Blackmagic URSA Mini 4.6K camera may not have the highest resolution at 4.6K. It may not also be the most expensive or the cheapest camera or have the most features, but it doesn't have the least amount of features either. As an overall, the Blackmagic URSA 4.6K camera packs a huge punch for the price you're going to pay. You're not going to find any other camera on the market today that's going to offer you this many features for less than $10,000. With that being said, it may not be the most expensive or the best camera out there, but but for the money, it can't and will not be beaten.
So guys, the URSA Mini 4.6K, what do I think? I think it's absolutely amazing. The sensor performs so much better than the production camera, original URSA, cinema camera, or even the pocket cinema camera. So you got the 1080p monitor, which is flip and rotates, viewfinder, V-mount, which will power the camera for at least an hour, hour and a half. The handle is pretty good. I wish it was a little bit more comfortable to hold. It's missing a little bit of form factor there, but not too bad. Just wish the buttons were a little more on the side, easier accessible for the thumb, like the C300 Mark II. But 15 stops of dynamic range up to 60p, 4.6K, or 4K DCI Ultra HD, 2K, 3K anamorphic, or just regular 1920 by 1080 HD. ProRes 422, HQ 444, XQ LT and proxy. You can do lossless DNG, 3:1 or 4:1. This camera is just great for the money. You're not going to find anything in the $7,000 range that's going to give you a setup like this. It's just that simple. I've always liked Blackmagic cameras. The production camera was better than the RED Mysterium X sensor. I had that video that was very, very popular. This camera is definitely a high-end killer is what it is. So the only problem with this camera is cinema DNG, lossless compressed. It's going to get you no more than 18 minutes on a 256 gigabyte card. Whereas if you go to 4:1 or 3:1, you're pushing 35 minutes a card. So only an hour if you got two 256 gigabyte cards. That's insane. The C300 Mark II will record an hour and 5 minutes of footage on a 256 gigabyte card. 400 megabits a second. So this thing chews data. I'd recommend getting a bunch of 256 gigabyte cards, or you can get a couple of 512s because they're now out. I'll put the link down there in the information box to B&H to get those cards as well. 512 gigs, I recommend shooting on at least having 2 or 3 of those on hand, or a bunch of 256 gig cards. But this camera is absolutely fantastic. The white balancing, I've shown you how to do that. It's got peaking right there on the monitor, zoom, display. You can adjustable diopter. You can slide the viewfinder in and out and adjust it with the locking thumb screw. You can just hold it by the handle at your side when you're not using it. It's really not that heavy. For the price, you can't go wrong. Where are you going to spend $7,400 on a camera that weighs 8-9 pounds, 15 stops dynamic range, 4.6K up to 60p? For that kind of money and that size and form factor, fully kitted out with a shoulder mount, where are you going to find that kind of camera for that cost? Something to think about. The URSA Mini 4.6K is the camera I recommend to anybody who's in the mid-tier of cameras or in that ballpark. Anybody who wants out of DSLRs, wants out of cameras like the cinema camera, GH4 production camera, wants to go with a full shoulder mount camera, but they don't want to spend the money of the C300 Mark II, C500, or the RED or an ARRI Alexa or anything like that. This is the camera to get. And if you're looking at getting a film camera or run and gun camera and your budget is between $4,000 and $7,000, this is probably the best camera under $10,000 in my opinion. Depending on what you're using it for, can kind of have a little bit of a play in that decision, but overall under 10 grand, this is probably the best film camera you're going to get, and it's absolutely fantastic. So hopefully you guys found this review helpful. If you want to purchase the URSA Mini or any of this setup that I've got here, put the links down there in the information box. Be sure to use those links to purchase any gear. Even if you're not buying the URSA Mini and you plan on purchasing other gear, just use our links in the information box to support the channel and keep the reviews coming. I also did an update to my Canon log. It's now going to be coming with 3D LUT. I've got that in that video as well. I'll put that link down there in the bottom of the screen for you to see that video. I got more videos coming out, the Panasonic GH5 and a couple other ones, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter. Go to faymusmedia.com/blog. On the right side of the screen, scroll down, put your email in, and you can sign up for that. This way you get all the newest reviews and news and new cameras coming out and all that good stuff. And don't forget, facebook.com/groups/happy shooting photo, and sign up for the happy shooting photo group there as well. Once again, I'm Corey with Faymus Media. Don't forget to subscribe, and happy shooting.